end of the war. Good afternoon. Ukraine Veterans Foundation works with the veterans, but also with their families, including families of those who perished in the front lines. Now, there are more than 1 million persons in the ranks of the Ukrainian security and defense forces, so we have to add another category, the families and the families of those perished ones. So this is why we can easily state that the number of persons who are becoming our beneficiaries is amounting to about 5 million people. They are an integral part of our society, and we continue studying their needs of the veterans and their family members to understand what are the challenges that we have currently and what are the challenges that we may predict, to start looking for the mechanisms and opportunities to avoid any complications on the way of reintegration back to civilian life after military service. And now that we're talking about employment, this year we had a study during which we were studying the veterans who have already reintegrated into civilian lives and those who are ATO veterans and who are active servicemen. And they all have a common vision of their future. In the same way, we had a joint study with the sociological group rating regarding the demands of the veterans. And last year we had yet another big survey of the big employers, during which we asked them what is their vision of reintegrating the veterans back into social civilian life. And we understand that we definitely have to avoid this idea of veteran as a person with benefits, but rather to view them as a person with opportunities. So we have to implement the retrainer, refresher trainings for them, because we understand that with the experience of battle operations, people get new values, they acquire new competencies, and those are the competencies that should be properly used during civilian life. In our survey, we're seeing, which is quite predictable, that the employers want to employ veterans because they have good leadership skills, they have good stress resilience skills, they know how to find solutions in stressful situations, they have good competencies in project management. But regardless all that, based on our survey, we see that about 30% of the veterans are currently unemployed, they have unemployed status, and we need to have something done with it. There might be different reasons for this, but one of the reasons that the veterans mention that they don't feel it comfortable psychologically getting back to their previous places of employment, because they get used to working with their brothers in arms, to submit to their commanders. Some of them are ready to open their own businesses, develop it, invite their brothers in arms to get them employed and to develop entrepreneurship in their private life. But some may want just to get hired. And this is why we're saying that the big corporations the big employers should develop the adaptation programs at their companies. And we know the examples of big companies who already work on that. They have dozens of thousands of employers, and in coordination with Ukrenergo, we work on a joint project for professional education and further employment of the veterans, because on one hand some may want to work in business, but there is still a huge demand for working specialties, working professions, and we have to work on that now already. We are in contact with Lobby X, and certain number of veterans, after getting back to civil life, they find their competences how to adapt to civilian life after the military service. They develop quadrocopters, they work in agricultural sector, developing agricultural drones. So we have to find all kinds of opportunities for the veterans, and we have to take advantage of the new experience. We have to demonstrate them how they can switch from military career to civilian life, adapting their competences and stepping on this new path in civilian life. Thank you, Ms. Karina. Ms. Olena, can you please tell us whether the veterans are applying to your service for new training courses? Do you have any figures about what is the number of veterans who have applied to the employment centers? Well, in our activity we pay a lot of attention not only to employment of the veterans but also for retrainings, mastering new specialties, because as previous speaker has mentioned, veteran is not about benefits, it's about opportunities, and we try to expand the range of tools using which we help the people who apply to us. Talking about the numbers for the time being, you know, every person is unique, they all have unique needs. So for example, this year there are 6 persons who have the status of battle operations participant according to the old classification applied to us, but at the same time there are some people applying to us who cannot be registered as unemployed, but still they need some support. So we provide services on a case-by-case basis. We try to find out what are the needs of the people, whom can they become, what can they become in view of their previous experience. Are they inclined to entrepreneurship? Do they need to improve their professional competences or skills? Do they need to have any of their skills honed? So it's a well, the society and civil organizations are developing, government organizations are developing, because now this matter is very important. Among our latest products, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that starting from the April last year, we implement the grant support program for the veterans, both male and female, and the members of their families. They have an opportunity to get from quarter up to 1 million hryvnia for the development of their own business. Many may think that grants are like loans and they have to pay interest on them, but the conditions of this program are so loyal that hiring the personnel after establishment their own businesses, as they pay salaries to their employees, the taxes paid from their salaries are used for payoff of this grant. So a certain amount of veterans have taken advantage of this program. They create hubs, they create bakeries, coffee shops, polygraphic facilities, repair shops. Well, it all depends on the specifics of the region where they open their businesses. That's why we hope that those grants for veterans, they will have they will gain more intense momentum, because currently, unfortunately, the most of the personnel is still involved in battle operations. Another project I would like to draw your attention to is the opportunity for the veterans to acquire free education at our training centers. We have 8 of them in total. The opportunity is available for veterans and persons accompanying them. They may pick any specialty out of the list of 95 professions or 400 education programs. People having oriented at what they want to do, they will be able to master those competences, and in future we will help them in the view of the new circumstances to find a new job. Also, at the same time, we understand that unfortunately we will have many people with disabilities. This is why, starting from the last year, we started implementing the program for the employers. As soon as you employ a person with disability, you can get compensation for outfitting the workspace for them. For the time being, we're seeing the necessity to change approach to this program. It shouldn't be only about employment, but it should be about veterans getting back to their workplace, and they may have a need to change their profession, and they will need probably some additional outfitting of their workspace by the employer. So we take into account all those aspects. We work with the civil organizations, with the veterans hubs and foundations, and we absorb all that information, all their needs, because the employment service is a representative of the state, and we want to create the joint window of information, so as a person comes to one place, they get all the services right away. So it's like we take a veteran by their hand and we walk them all the way from window to window to get all the necessary paperwork and to support them on all the phases. Well, Ms. Olena, thank you very much. It's cool to get some generalizing recommendations and to hear all those wonderful initiatives of yours. So, Mr. Oleksandr, you're the author of a guidebook named How to Achieve Career Success After Military Service. For what I understand, this document aggregates all of the advice for the veterans. So can you give us more color on that? Why is it supposed to be useful for our veterans? Well, thank you very much. I want to tell you a small story. Starting from year 14 to year 16, I was involved in TechMed. It was called ATO back then, and after the active phase of ATO, we founded our veterans organization, and we provide free medical aid, consultations, rehabilitation to the retired veterans. And at certain stage, we've realized that the work is a kind of treatment too, that those services that we provide to our clients are not so efficient. So having the experience of training in the United States, we've visited about 50 veteran spaces over there, and we've realized to what extent the employment works in the context of families which can support themselves, they can cover their subsistence. And meanwhile, us as an organization, we were trying to find additional resources for that. So we've founded a military TV show which supported hundreds of veterans. We were implementing this project in coordination with WorkUA and Ministry for Veterans Affairs and other participants, and based on the TV show we've realized that we need certain set of tools, some things that are not covered in those videos or other information sources. So the Ministry of Defense of the United States provided us with their approaches that they use to work with the veterans. So we've analyzed all those techniques to identify whether they are relevant. So this kind of experience is a veteran's experience too. Oleksandr may mention it later, but their experience in ODESA, they don't just help the veterans in their employment. The veterans create the jobs by themselves, and they are the stem of our nation, the backbone of it. And using our guidebook, we wanted to support them on their way after demobilization. So it covers some important issues, including how to properly find the job, how to make a resume, how to find your strong and weak sides. We had more than 100 consultations with the veterans, during which we worked with their resumes. And as we've checked through their resumes that they submit to the employers, like every employer, in fact, is pretty loyal in relation to the veteran. But as they see their resumes, they cannot accept it because the form it's made in, it does not comply with the form required by the employer. So it's a small gap that we have to cover. There was also Anastasia Khizhniak, who is HR of Jubal company, which works in more than 70 countries of the world, and we've studied the jobs market in terms of competition in the jobs market, in the global jobs market, and thus using this guidebook we used it to provide to make our veterans more competitive in the international jobs market. Also, it's important to mention an American organization, Pittsburgh's Highest Veterans, which demonstrates their efficiency in Pittsburgh. They use the same approach. They use these kind of materials to make the veterans happy. They're happy after the military service. They enjoy certain respect. We have a lot of work to do, and I want to extend my appreciation to Nova Ukraine, who supported this guidebook. There was additional printed with their financial support. The guidebook is being provided to Ukrainian Veterans Foundation. 200 guidebooks will be extended to Alexander's Veterans Hub in Odessa. Please, if you're a veteran or if you're a veteran's family member, please apply to Veterans Hub Odessa, where you will be able to get the guidebook for your defender. Thank you so much. But can you please still give us more details? What does this guidebook contain? What are the recommendations? What is the content? What a veteran or a veteran's family member may find there? Thank you. It's quite a good question. Using this guidebook, we've made certain roadmaps. So all the ways after retirement from the military service is quite a widespread thing. The main issues arising on that path, the self-identification from the point of view, where should I go next? Because in the majority of cases, when we talk about civil life, it's a very important thing, because as you become a serviceman, you have brothers in arms, you have a commander who tells you what to do, and in civil life you're alone, and you solve all those questions, all those issues on your own. You don't have brothers in arms. And in our guidebook, we usually advise to apply for help, like come to a veteran space that is available almost in every region now. There are different opportunities in every region. This guidebook describes it quite clearly. There are certain links provided. And why is it important? Because as we talk about asking for help, it's important to describe the further path of the veteran, because what we've seen, a veteran, it's a kind of skill, you know, a skill to find job. This skill is getting lost because during military service you frequently just fulfill the orders and you're not supposed to analyze a lot of things. As we were working on this guide, we invited employers. We went to the company where more than 100 veterans work. For example, a company Nibulon from Mykolaiv. They had more than they had 167 veterans employed before this full-scale invasion, and we found what other difficulties they were facing. For employers, it's important. Such thing as a dress code is important. So it's not only from the point of view of our desires, but the employers, what are they facing, what are the complexities that they're stumbling upon in their work with the veterans. So this guide provides a number of approaches for self-identification. Again, we've debunked a number of myths, we've paid attention to some facts. For example, we have friends, the owners of different companies. For example, we work in the medicine, we have some hospitals, and for example, we may recommend shooter medics, like we advise them to work in the clinic, they have good salary, and they say, no, my skills are not good enough. And we've seen all that myth. You know, some of those myths, some of that bias is being imposed by the society. This is our point of view, our opinion. We know that the Ministry for Veterans Affairs, Ukrainian Veterans Foundation, works on the image of our veteran, but in our guide we've provided certain tools. What's important, the guide is a protocol approaches that we've taken from the American Army. They were completely transformed, remade to work on our end, but what they help is not to do any harm for the veteran. That was the main task as we were developing this guide, not to do any harm, not to make things worse. We were consulting with the Ministry of for Veterans Affairs, and now we're through the processing of this guide with the team, with the expert team of the Ministry of culture and information policy. We work with the higher educational institutions. The guide will be handed over to the chairs of the universities where our veterans are going to study, and this is how we want to help our defenders. Thank you, Mr. Oleksandr, and I would like to ask more questions from the organizations which organize programs like this. Like, for example, from you, Mr. Oleksandr, we would like to hear about the experience of Veterans Hub ODESA. How do you support the veterans in finding their new jobs or their place in the professional activity? Thank you for the question. Well, really, within 5 years we've gained certain expertise, certain experience, and what's worth mentioning that this tool, such tool as the veteran spaces, it's really an efficient thing. It's an efficient model because the veterans, as they look for this point of entry into civilian life, and this point of entry is the safety point, this point, the place of the secure place where they can come and talk, get some information. And Veterans Hub ODESA clearly understands this type of problem, and we highlight it as one of the most important areas of our work: support of the veterans and improvement of their competitiveness in the job market, and assistance in establishment their own businesses. And here obviously we're talking about some basic opportunities. In Odessa region we have good cooperation with the employment centers. We tell our beneficiaries about the opportunities provided by the state. On top of that, we create our own education products in cooperation with the higher educational institutions. We've implemented a number of projects in coordination with the Odessa State Economic University, Odessa National University named after Ushinsky. With the support of international partners, we implemented such programs as community of activities, the business bridge, and the essence of this program is to improve or develop the personal qualities of a person, like self-confidence, psychological resilience, ability to think critically, to analyze. We have to update the existing knowledge and to add some new knowledge. And in terms of establishing their own businesses on the Business Bridge program, we were talking about the basic finance, risk management, budgeting, and a number of such essential for the beginner entrepreneur type of skills. So our veteran space, TransHub Odessa, it assists to creation of jobs. It's worth mentioning that the veterans who are a part of our veterans community, they've created two agricultural servicing cooperatives, a Pearl of Odessa region and ATO veterans of Liman district. The Pearl of Odessa region was supported by the Canadians. It's a greenhouse facility that employs 6 veterans, including those with disability, and the ATO veterans of Liman district were supported by Austrian community of veterans. They've supported the Liman guys in procuring a tractor, and they manufacture fodder for the cattle. So we have practical cases when the veterans create jobs for the veterans. And I would like also to thank the Ukrainian Veterans Foundation, which with its programs, with their activities, they support creating jobs for the veterans, and it's been practically implemented in Odessa region. Some veterans have gotten grants for development of their own business. I'm talking about Veterana Pizza in Odessa, and also the creation of new businesses. And the veterans who are a part of Veterans Hub Odessa, under mentorship of our veteran space, were able to defend their application and to open their own, to get grants to open their own businesses. So Veteran Hubs ODESA works in a number of areas. We inform the veterans on the existing opportunities, the joint projects with the higher educational institutions, the educational programs, and support of establishment of veterans' businesses. We have direct communication with the employers. And among those employers, there are state-controlled employers. We had a working meeting with ODESA Department of Ukrzaliznytsia. We were talking about the ways of better communication in terms of employment of veterans in ODESA Department of Ukrzaliznytsia, what may be the problematic issues arising and how to solve them. We were also working with private companies such as Solanta Energy, Green Tech, a construction company looking for veterans, even veterans for the disabilities, to provide them with jobs. They have demand for that, right? And we communicate this information to the veteran community, and we try to set those direct bridges. We have successful experience that we are ready to share, and we already share it within the coalition of veteran spaces that includes 24 organizations. And we clearly understand that the development and creation of the veteran spaces in the country, when they are available in every community, it will assist to employment of the veterans, to their career success, and to making them happy. Thank you, Mr. Oleksandr, for what you're doing. Mr. Hlib, Mr. Oleksandr has mentioned that you've supported the issue of these guides. So what are the other projects on reintegration of the veterans in professional sphere that are supported by your foundation? Good question. I think the project manager would give a better answer, but what I can add that we're working on entering into a memorandum with the Ministry for Veterans Affairs, and we're looking for a big donor, systemic donor. We have a good project plan. I'm not gonna tell you the details because if it doesn't happen, it wouldn't be pleasant, diplomatically saying. So we're looking for a donor. We have a pitch, but to print this guide, you need to raise charitable contributions in the United States, like $20 in average, and now we can hand over these guides to the veterans. We know the big systemic donors, small donors, we know how to pitch, and we're raising funding. If we raise that amount, we will have quite a massive project. It would fulfill the function of the social reintegration, including mental health support and professional reorientation and adaptation. That's in brief. I would like to share a little bit of my experience and the context of reintegration of the veterans. What I want to mention, let me talk on my behalf. My personal experience may not be the same with the other services, servicemen, which is normal. I had a civil specialty, I had a civil profession, quite a good one. I was making some middle class money, but I got mobilized as a volunteer. Thanks to my employer who supported me, they kept my job. I didn't have any problems with the career and such. People in my unit, we had about 5 to 10% of such people who had a good salary, above average, they had good profession, and they had a place to come back to. 20% more were making some salary like average or above average. They were either entrepreneurs or they had some working professions. And for them, it's no problem coming back to their jobs. They just continue doing the job that they were doing before, like installing air conditioners and making $4,000 per month. But what should we do with the rest of those veterans for whom, as they get mobilized in the armed forces of Ukraine, 100,000 hryvnias is the amount they were never making in their lives. Such people are numerous. That's a huge amount for them. And we have to focus on the program when we talk about reintegration. It's a wonderful social function, as it was mentioned, communication, talking, people, like society. It's a type of treatment. Work is a type of treatment, but again, don't hope that as you come back to the civil life, you're making the same 100,000 hryvnias. But there is such an expectation being formulated. People get used to a certain level of life, their families get used to a certain level of life, and step back is pretty difficult, you know. And people keep telling me, like, well, you can change your profession and you can make good money. And I'm telling people, you can make good money anywhere if you're a good professional. You can make good money in finance, you can make good money in, like, making furniture, but it's a career path. You have to invest 8 years of your life, and after reintegration you become a junior IT specialist, and it's $800. So we have to focus and find an answer to this question. We have to formulate the proper expectation in those people, and proper reintegration back to their profession, and proper focus, proper financial literacy, understanding of how to dispose of, of how to handle your proper finance, and such a leap for the people. It makes their section of life pretty low quality. So this is why there is such a problem as ludo money. Like, you have dependency on gambling, so you have your income growing and you don't know what to do with a lot of this money. And as we reintegrate a lot of veterans back to our society, we have to help them to find their new profession, change their profession, or get back to their own profession, to build some career path, as we say, some career consultations, to help them build some perspective where they see a point in which they want to end up at, and what they need to do to get there. Because after you retrain as an IT specialist, you don't make $4,000. You have to study from scratch as an accountant, as an IT specialist, whatever. Like, this start is way lower than the level of expectations that they get. Thank you, Mr. Hlib, for sharing your experience and your opinions. Mr. Ihor, your organization, Nova Ukraine, you work in Kyiv, you represent an organization based in Kyiv. Can you please share your experience of helping the veterans finding their place in professional life? First of all, I would like to thank everybody for gathering here. It's my pleasure to see here the representatives of the government, because only our joint cooperation with the government can yield the result in those figures mentioned by Ms. Karina. Millions of people. We have to realize that no charity foundation alone, even with the broadest program, even all of us sitting here with all of our efforts, we won't be able to make it on our own. We won't be able to make the life of those people so it looks like properly after they've invested some part of their lives in defending of our country. And to summarize what the charity organizations are and how are they related to the state, to the society, to the veterans, we perceive the charity foundations as the first communication link between the society, veterans, and the state. We understand that the state cannot be flexible and quick, but we do not have political opportunities as a state has. We don't have such a funding, and we don't have bureaucratic mechanisms at the same time. So our task is to see what can be the ways of cooperation with the veterans. How can we help them? We have to test it quickly and to come up with the results and feedback with the veterans. We can even do something wrong, but for us it's like a startup to help the veterans. What helps? How in which part. So getting back to the guide as to the tool that is supposed to help the veterans, I would like to say that this guide solves such problems as disappointment after and desperation after getting back to civil life, a perception of civil life as vain, a perception of the civil society as those who do not understand the problems of the veterans. As Hlib has mentioned, the expectations are very high with those people who get back to civilian lives, both emotional and financial expectations, and provision of this roadmap and the formulation of those expectations when we tell the people how should they act in civilian life is one of the tasks solved by this guide. And the mechanism of transformation of such of absence of orders in civil life, transformation it into the freedom of decision making, that's a huge problem the veterans are going to face, because as they are at war, they get clear and strict orders, everything is clear for them, they risk their lives, they get paid by the state. So after the war is over or after they retire, we see it based on the conversations with the veterans or the therapists, the people get lost, they don't understand the purpose of the civil life, and which results in certain errors committed by the veterans, by the retired veterans. So we've supported this guide. We want to thank Oleksandr for investing his time and effort in creation of this guide. This guide is the first step in communication between the society and the veterans. It's not a magic pill that solves all the problems, but is just the first step. Step per step in the dialogue. The dialogue between the society and the veteran is something that is going to cure them, because it's no guarantee that as soon as they get employed for the first time, the veterans don't like it, they quit, then they get some other job, they get high salary there. No, things do not happen like this. The civilian life is different from military life because there is certain degree of freedom and the personal responsibility. It's not like someone else is taking responsibility for you. So this switching of status from veteran to civilian, this is the main task of our guide, and we want to both the state and the society, as well as our colleagues from all of the veterans organizations, charity foundations, other organizations supporting the veterans. We want them to perceive this guide as an opportunity to start proper communication with the veterans. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Ihor. Probably we have some questions on the floor. Mariana Lomachenko, Ukraine Forum. My question is about the cooperation with the Ministry for Veterans Affairs. Is it easy? Is it complicated? And another question, I don't know, probably it exists already, but is the government going to implement specific program for the state for employment of the veterans? Do we have any joint program, or is it like other diverse programs of other charity foundations? Well, probably Ms. Karina may answer. Well, I'm not quite a representative of the Ministry for Veterans Affairs. It's not quite convenient to answer whether the communication is convenient or not. I think it's better probably for the authors to other. Well, the team in the Ministry for Veterans Affairs was upgraded recently. We are in communication. It's important to add, it's our opinion only as an organization. We have the new Ministry for Veterans Affairs. It was only founded in year 2019 and it started working in year 2020. We work with the Ministry for Veterans Affairs of the United States. They have 50 or 60 years of experience. So our task as an organization is to support our ministry as well. And us as an organization, we try to cooperate, we try to support, and we see this feedback from the ministry. We do cooperate, Svetlana Kashinets and Svetlana Berezina and many other experts of the ministry got involved in our work. They were working, they were doing it after their working hours, and they implement a number of important policies based on our experience of organization. That was quite an efficient cooperation. I can only say about our organization. Probably Oleksandr, who cooperates too, may add something. Well, honestly, today we observe the government agencies such as Ukrainian Veteran Foundation and the Ministry of Defense, Ministry for Veterans Affairs are already pondering over the efficiency and systemic nature of their work to make sure that after our victory, the biggest number of veterans get employed by good employment, getting new good jobs. A lot of this is being done from the point of view of digital solutions, digitalization, so people get all the necessary information. There is a number of information products already in place. But on the other hand, what I would like to draw everyone's attention to is that there are two more aspects. Today, the jobs market has a lot of gaps because many people have left and there is a huge need for workforce. On the other hand, there are veterans who have new competences related to military service, but the world is changing, the technologies are changing, and after demobilization, those skills that were actual 5 to 20 years ago, they may lose their efficiency. The veterans have to retrain to get new skills, to adjust to the new technologies, to the new market conditions. We have to ensure this project, so to say, to keep our hand on pulse, to fully enter the jobs market, to find good, well-paid job and continue living. So this is why we have to do this job in coordination with the Ministry for Veterans Affairs, Veterans Foundation, and using this opportunity, I would like to thank civil organization Green Line for doing the great job and their partners, because such guides with information about how to look for the job, how to find an interesting job and well-paid job, is very important. It's important in the context of big regions, specifically Odessa region. We have 91 community, and as such guide ends up in all of the communities, it will be easier for the veterans who live in those villages, in those districts, to get familiarized with that information and change their lives to better. I would like to add a little bit. That's quite an important aspect that we're discussing, the cooperation. And we need to understand that the veterans are not like a closed community. It's an integral part of our society. And we have no right to put responsibility on someone else. Like, we all can cover our aspect. Charity Foundation can cover ours, and the veterans have their responsibilities. They can add a lion's share to this aggregate of our future. Now, with the beginning of the full-scale invasion, the jobs market has changed significantly. On one hand, we don't have enough people. On the other hand, the employers do not always openly and properly employ their employees. And we know it based on the information from the focus groups. Not all of the employers are ready to employ veterans because they have to pay for temporary disabilities. We understand that the war influences the health. The veterans may be subject or may be prone to more diseases. According to the law, 2 weeks of additional vacation are envisaged by the legislation, which result in additional costs for the employers. Some people are trying to fight to circumvent this or circumnavigate this standard, we have to standardize it, and us as a Veterans Foundation, we work on the amendments to legislation to secure the veterans from such against such complications, and the civil organizations in the regions, they have to get involved in the protection of veterans' rights to make sure that the veterans feel this support and all this influence from small up to big organizations. You know, the state cannot like penetrate in every region, and in view of our focus groups, some surveys, we enter into partnerships with different organizations, and recently we've launched an OSINT analysis training course, but it's a small number of veterans who undergo those courses and get employed. It's like 30 persons. IT training course that we've launched in cooperation with the partners. There were also 30 people undergoing it, but now we're talking about millions of veterans. This is why on every level it's important to include this integral component and to think, how can I help practically? We work currently on a draft law, developing the techniques with the therapists and HR specialists to scale up those techniques, to provide the employment centers with all the information using which they can support the veterans. In fact, we work on employment of the veterans, and I want to thank the organizers and all of the organizations which have taken part in preparation of this guide. It's quite an important component for the veteran to read, to understand that they are heard and they know where to go next. I want to thank you. I want to thank all of the guests for important initiatives, important projects that you are implementing. Again, we were talking about the opportunities for the veterans on the path of their professional growth. Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum will continue its operation next week. Stay tuned.